Hey there, gang. Patrick King here, and I want to thank you for tuning in for episode number 40 of Talking About Horses. I can't believe I've done 40 of these already. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by equestrian mental skills coach, Jane Pike. As an equestrian mental skills coach, Jane works with riders all over the world, assisting them in developing the mindset, mental skills, and strategies to increase confidence, banish self-doubt, and work with an effective strategy to allow them to get the best out of themselves and their horses. Her approach is practical and achievable, providing a replicable process that allows riders to harness their mindset and develop the mental strength and agility to be effective and compassionate riders, competitors, trainers, and horse people. That's a mouthful. Jane, thank you so much for joining us on Talking About Horses.
Thank you so much, Patrick. That's quite the introduction.
I snagged it. I won't lie. I snagged it from a website.
I just try to say graceful throughout the reading of it. Like, yes, thank you.
Oh, yeah, right. Absolutely, yeah. You're doing your little curtsy and yeah, I get it. Oh, goodness. Well, awesome. So there you go. Good. So Jane, you had said before we went on that you were a little bit nervous about this because you're switching seats and now you're in the hot seat. And I'm kind of excited about that. I won't lie, because you know what they say, like, payback's a bitch, you know? My first interview was with you. So
around the right way, that I went first and then you get the ultimate, like, final word.
Exactly. That's exactly how this works. So you got to interview me, and now game on. The tables have turned.
So good.
Oh, awesome. So, I just want to start off the bat. Tell us, who is Jane Pike? Now, we know equestrian mental skills coach, and I want to talk a little bit about that as we get into it. But first, who is Jane? How did Jane get involved with horses and you know, that whole spiel? Give us that.
Who is Jane? Well, it's like a universal question, the ultimate question that we start off with. Who am I? How did I get involved with horses? Well, I was born into a horsey family, and my mum was super passionate about horses, and she had a Arab cross, I think his name was, Icon, who she actually had until he was 40 years old. He only passed away relatively recently.
Oh,
a big part of my early years, and from that place I just got more and more enamored with horses, and ended up on the show scene. That was kind of my first foray into the competitive area. And we travelled all over Australia competing with ponies and then later with horses. And I just actually can't really think of a time where they weren't a really integral part of my life. So it's been, they've been a huge part of my evolution, I guess, right from the start.
Awesome. So you said that he was a half Arab. Did you show the Arabian circuit, or what sort of?
No, not at all. That was just a completely random side note. So we had thoroughbreds. My parents bred English riding ponies to start with. I actually haven't talked about this before, English riding ponies. And then I used to work with my own young horses and ride for some other people on the circuit, but mainly it was just we had thoroughbreds and riding ponies to start with. That was the main thing, and now I've sort of graduated into lots of different areas, actually, and different horses. I don't have a horse breed that I'm affiliated with.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. So then let's talk about the equestrian mental skills coaching. What is that?
Well, that's a great question. So I feel like what that is has changed for me over the course of the years that I've been involved in this work. And I think from the beginning, when I first started getting into it, it was more from a traditional sports psychology perspective or behavioural psychology perspective. And what we all know is that, you know, when you're working with sports, quote unquote, that are singular, in that if you're, you know, riding a bike or playing golf or doing something which just involves you needing to control your mind and body within a certain paradigm, then there's a lot more. It's a lot different to working with a beautiful animal such as a horse, who obviously has their own thought process, their own opinion, you know, their own sentience, and that brings a whole different dynamic to the equation. So for me, it's been such a progressive progress is not the right word to say, but such a progressive learning experience in how to take, some of the more linear aspects of understanding our mind and psychology, and then bridge that with the necessary elements of being present and developing the ability to be in emotional flow. I think that's a huge part of it.
Okay.
And to be responsive to what it is that's presenting, so that you're actually in relationship in a way where you show up, presenting the best version of yourself.
Awesome. Well, that sounds simple enough.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
simple.
so.
So there's a slight time lag on the audio, so I apologize if I'm leaving spaces.
Oh, no worries. I figured it was for effect.
Yes, dramatic effect.
Okay, so you talk about the behavioral and the sports psychology, and I've seen you've got quite a background with a lot of that stuff. Can you tell us about your background with that?
Yeah, so for me, growing up just on a personal level, I always had a fascination with how it is we could be in charge of ourselves. I came from a family that had a few mental health issues going on, and I saw the presentations, I guess, of anxiety and fear and what that created for someone in the midst of that. And I think from an early age, I decided that I really wanted to be in charge of myself, because I saw what it looked like to not be in charge of yourself. And from there, I just developed this fascination with psychology and behavioral science, and I ended up studying. I haven't got a sports psych degree, but I've got a behavioral science background. And then flowing further on from that, have done hypnotherapy, NLP, equine assisted learning, just anything really which sparks my fascination. A little bit like yourself, when there's so much to learn once you really crack the layers open. And I wouldn't define myself by any one of those singular elements, but they've certainly informed my practice and my work and how it is I've adventured forward. So I feel really blessed to have had a myriad of experiences available to me to draw on. And then there's sort of an alchemy within that where you create your own thing, I guess, but based on experiential learning and what you see presenting time and time again, both in personal experience and in my work. And then obviously just like trying things out.
Okay, sure. The experimentation, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool, very cool. So the hypnotherapy and the NLP, that's pretty interesting. Can you tell us, for our listeners that aren't sure about what that or what those pieces are, do you want to explain those a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So hypnotherapy has, I think most of our association comes from dramatized versions of hypnotherapy, and that's all around, someone kind of tapping you on the shoulder, and all of a sudden you're out for like 2 hours and you don't know what you've done in that time. But really, it's not anything to do with that.
Okay.
Hypnotherapy is just really quietening the processes of your conscious mind, so that you can get into the finer workings of the subconscious mind, which is really what motivates all of our habits and behaviors and processes which we are habitually engaged in. So I don't do a lot of one-on-one work with that, but the hypnotherapy principles certainly inform the audios that I make. I do a lot of visualization and meditation audios for my online program. I've also made specific audios for riders that I might be working with one-on-one who have certain amounts of competition anxiety, or just have trouble silencing what I call the voice of the itty-bitty shitty committee, which is that little voice inside your head, which is like, what are you doing? You're not made for this. You're out of place.
Gotcha.
I like that kind of conversation that goes on and on. NLP is like a huge, long, very unromantic word. It stands for neuro-linguistic programming. And basically, it's just about looking at the underlying programs, what they call meta programs, that the mind runs through, and understanding how language, how focus, and how certain elements of how we perceive things, or how it is we attach meaning to things, changes our perception of what it is that we're experiencing. So, like I say, I'm not a purist in any one of these things. There are certainly people out there that focus specifically on these areas, but the principles have definitely informed my work. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. And you said you do sometimes custom audio programs for your clients?
Yeah, so I haven't been doing that for a while, but certainly what I do is if there are people who are like I worked with Robin and Warwick Schiller for the World Equestrian Games,
Okay.
and we put out specific elements of what it was they wanted to focus on or what they felt like was holding them back, and then I make them an audio. So the reason that it's custom is that I sort of think of it like if we were to think of the conscious and unconscious mind and you were to compare it this way. So if I was to sit here and you were to tell me what your challenges were in the saddle, and let's say, for instance, just hypothetically speaking, that you said, I really want to get out there and compete, but I don't feel like I'm good enough and I don't feel like I deserve to be there. Like maybe those are your two things that commonly come up which you feel like are getting in the way. And that whole not good enough thread is such a strong one that seems to we think we're the only ones that feel that way, but actually it's like a human condition. We all don't feel good enough in some shape or form. So if we were to sit face to face and have that conversation, and then I was to say, Patrick, you're totally good enough. Like you can do this, just get out there and do your thing. The reason that you don't absorb that is because basically your conscious mind is acting like a little boxer-size class, and it's like pinging off all of this suggestion, which doesn't allow you to really get the full effect of what it is that I'm saying, which is why, we can have conversations with people all the time, but, and they can be saying really lovely and, sort of things that we want to hear, but if it doesn't actually line up with what it is that we believe about ourselves, then we repel it essentially because it's not in alignment with our internal belief system.
Gotcha.
So, audios or hypnosis are really nice ways of, the first part is generally dedicated to just quietening your mind.
Okay.
And a relaxed state where you're similar to like it is like you are when you just are about to fall asleep. So that really quiet place, where you're sort of you're awake, but everything's a little bit calmer and you're in a much more peaceful place. You're in quite a receptive place at that point. And then we start to introduce what's called suggestions, which is something that we've pre-designed between us, where we it's like uploading an app to your brain. If you think of it just running through a series of suggestions that are the types of thoughts that you would want to hear, and that ultimately you would like to believe in, and that is the way that it works. It sounds very hocus pocus, but there's a lot of science to the brain waves and how it is we're absorbing different pieces of information. And I found the results to be really fascinating off that.
Wow, that's very cool. That's very cool. So you were talking about how the conscious and the unconscious kind of battle each other in those conversations, and how the unconscious sort of is where the core beliefs, is that what you would call them? The core ideas of self are coming from?
Yeah. So all our unconscious drivers are the things that appear in our day-to-day or in our riding life that you might typically say, I just don't know why I feel that way, or I don't know why I do this, but I do this. So it's all of those driven behaviours that are outside of what we feel to be as our conscious control. So ultimately, where we can try to override things with willpower or by force our way through, but unless we're really looking at the underlying drivers as to why it is we're doing something, then we're really only working on the surface level to affect change in any great way or any meaningful, sustainable way anyway.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. So that's the unconscious driver. So now you were talking about, I love the title that you gave, the voice of the itty bitty shitty committee.
Yeah, the itty bitty shitty committee. I think it's really helpful to have, we're having really, these topics are like huge topics of conversation that we've just sort of danced over.
Yes.
And what I've really come to know is that training with kindness and recognizing that ultimately we don't want to be at war with ourselves is fundamental to any kind of movement forward. Okay. And for the most part, the reason that I don't singularly attach myself to any one of these things is because I think that as human, we are many and varied, and we are so unique in what it is that's presenting, and we deserve to have what it is that we're experiencing honoured without reducing it to being just like, this is your conscious mind, this is your unconscious mind. You know, like ultimately what I am fascinated with these days is emotional flow, which is why it is that an emotion is presenting and how it is we can cycle through it so we stay in alignment and in flow with our emotions, as opposed to suppressing them or pretending or faking it till we make it. And I think that this common element which is discussed or brought to the forefront, which is the that voice of the itty bitty shitty committee, is a really good example of just how much self-compassion we've been practicing or are able to practice, and really what they represent are the outer limits of our comfort zone. So as soon as you start to expand or move forward in any way, you always are going to have this opposition come up inside you, because essentially you're challenging that internal homeostasis point or that internal equilibrium point.
Okay.
It's a part of you that goes, whoa, 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 like back the truck up. What are you doing? Is this a good idea? And the way that I look at it is the itty bitty shitty committee is really that internal, it's like the guard or the gatekeeper at the edge of your comfort zone that is interested in keeping you safe, but not so much interested in like you expanding to be like this amazing, expanding into amazingness, if you like. It's just like, let's just keep you in a padded room where you don't have to go out. You don't have to present yourself to any kind of like emotional or physical harm, and we'll keep everything safe. But we know that's really not a realistic expectation of life or horses, definitely.
Gotcha. So that itty bitty shitty committee in that moment is kind of like the sort of the helicopter mom. It's sort of the comfort provider saying, stay here, stay safe.
Yeah, I think so, because if you can think of it that way, it saves you going to war with yourself. Basically, we're never trying to work to our downfall. We're always trying to work to our best benefit. Like, there's no part of us which is actually purposely trying to sabotage ourselves. There's always a positive or constructive reason as to why we are motivated to behave in particular ways. And often if you listen to that voice of the itty bitty shitty committee, they operate on thought loops, which is there will be familiar threads or narrative time and time again, which run on repeat. And once you're aware of what they are, you'll notice there's some familiar limiting beliefs or associations or limitations which you're cycling through, basically stories which you're telling yourself over and over and over again, which are representing instances. And so what the itty bitty shitty committee does is just alerts you to some of those, what they are basically, and allows you to, if you choose to go that way, dive a little bit deeper and figure out how you can actually soften the edges of that to move forward in a way that's really integrated.
Okay. So these thought loops, then, we can, once we become aware of them, we can go in and alter those, we can change those, or how do we go to battle with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's just becoming aware of the stories that you're telling yourself, and often we actually aren't even aware of how it is we're talking to ourselves, or how that voice is really holding the driver's wheel, so that awareness in and of itself, if you actually to take notice of how it is you talk to yourself and take notice of the times when that voice is at strongest, you will find that there are these familiar narratives which pop up. And so that awareness is definitely the first step. The second step is then to get yourself into a space where you actually get clear on how it is you would like things to be. So the way that I think of it is, if you are sitting as you are now, and in front of you is just this big pile of stuff, and that pile of stuff represents the present moment. So all the present moment is the present manifestation of your past decisions and actions and everything that's been prior, making itself known in the now. Now, what we do is we observe that, and then we go, okay, that means that it's going to be this way in the future. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way if we can actually step back and observe what it is that's going on, and then say, well, how is it that I would like things to be? So you create a story from this creative zone, this intentional zone that all of us have within us, and then you say, is it that I need to do in terms of actions and how it is I go about things to line up with that intention, as opposed to repeating these stories that keep coming up time and time again. And obviously this is an incredibly simplistic way of describing the process, but it's a combination of skills, and as well just being able to separate yourself out from that overthinking space and get reconnected with your intuition and your physical intelligence and all the things that actually allow you to cycle through things in an active way. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I think it does. So let's talk a little bit then. You just mentioned the intuition and the physical intelligence. Let's talk about those. What is that? What would you call our intuition when it comes to these stories that I'm assuming you're talking about, within respect to these stories that we're telling ourselves?
Yeah, so if we were to backtrack a little bit just for the sake of clarity, I think a lot of us have a really overdeveloped logical intelligence. We have an education system which really favors intellect and analysis and breaking things down, and that's how our society is largely structured. And then on the other side of that, we have things like emotions and feeling and intuition, which perhaps are seen as a little bit woo-woo. They're not as purposely explored in lots of areas, and they're not something that we have been gifted with the ability to learn about or to think about too much as we've grown up. So I'm sure you commonly experience in writers as like overthinking is like a huge problem.
Sure.
And the stories are, we get paralyzed by this overthinking paradigm. And so the way that I think about things moving forward is that we want to make sure that we have a really fluid movement, but what I describe as our four intelligences. So they are our logical intelligence, our physical intelligence, our emotional intelligence, and our intuitive intelligence. And when we're stuck on a story or we're stuck in overthinking, we are predominantly stuck in that logical realm. We're stuck in that logical intelligence place, and we're overthinking and underdoing primarily, like we're afraid of making mistakes, we're afraid of getting it wrong, all of those things which would naturally see a cycle of thought into action. Intuition really is insight, so you have a flash of awareness about what to do with your horse, or a moment of clarity about how it is you move forward. That is a function of your intuition, as is the ability to dream or to vision or to say this is how I want things to be. Those are all really typical aspects of our intuitive selves. And so when you're in this story loop or this negative story loop, typically in the first place, you've lost your ability to be objective with what it is that you're thinking. So you've fused yourself with supposed negative stories, and you aren't able to create a space between what it is you're experiencing, between yourself and what it is that you're thinking. And from that place, then you actually can't action a solution, obviously, or you can't sort of step into that space where you say, what is it actually that I want, and how is it that I'm going to get there?
Okay, so when we start to lose this objectivity, how can we recognize that? How can we fix that? Or interrupt it, maybe?
You've lost your objectivity when you only entertain and put energy behind thoughts which align up with what it is that you believe. So, for instance, if someone gives you a different way of thinking about things and you immediately reject it, or you notice that when you're entertaining thoughts in your own brain space, that if you would immediately discount anything positive or anything constructive that was said about you and hold things that were negative or unkind or that you didn't, that didn't feel good, then you know that you're not objective, because objectivity involves you being able to look at the broad spectrum of what it is that's offered or presented and entertain each of those equally. But when you can't do that, when you're attached to a negative orientation or you're only entertaining what's not working, then you're not objective, because obviously that's only a small part of what presents, or at least not the only part of what presents. So that objectivity is really, really important. And the way that I think of it is to think of every thought that invitation to invite that into your reality. And when you think of it as an invitation, then that you get really clear on what it is that you want to put energy behind, that you want to let go. And really the process is you don't thoughts, you don't have to even redirect them so much. It's just about what is it that you are thinking right now, and is that something that you actually, or is it something that you need to let go?
It kind of sounds a bit like mindfulness, huh?
Yeah, a lot of, I mean, you can't separate out any of those practices, mindfulness, meditation. It's basically like a lot of the elements of it, or a lot of the principles of it, are all interwoven in what I'm saying.
Okay. Fantastic. Awesome. So then you were talking earlier about being present. You were talking about the emotional flow. You were talking about showing up. As a rider, how can we be more present, maybe both with ourselves and with our horses, especially when we've got these emotional loops that are traveling around?
Yeah. So the first thing to let go of is this idea that something is positive or negative, because we have such a linear view of emotions that present. And what happens within that is we tend to suppress the emotions, try to pretend that they're not there, the emotions that we consider to be bad, and that might be fear, that might be anxiety, frustration, all of these emotions we typically put in the bad basket.
Okay.
We have confidence and joy and, all of these other emotions which we would see at the polar opposite of that, and those are the ones obviously that we strive for. But the problem when we start to polarize those two things is that we actually are missing what it is that we're not honoring what it is that's presenting. And the best definition I've heard of emotions is that they are, and this is another big sentence, action requiring neurological messages, which means that every emotion that presents has a motivating question behind it. And once you understand what that motivating question is, action in an appropriate direction, and you stay in flow with the emotion. So for instance, anxiety is a really typical example of this. I deal a lot with anxiety with riders, and people go out of their way to not be anxious or to pretend they're not anxious. And the moment that happens, we're obviously the emotion, and we are instantly at that point out of alignment between what it is we're thinking, what it is we're feeling, and what it is we're presenting to our horse. So you have people showing up that are trying not to be anxious, and it's just written all over them that they're concerned, and their horse is obviously picking up on the finer nuance. And so on and so forth. So we know sort of how that trajectory goes. So what I really encourage is saying, okay, here I am, and I'm feeling anxious. And really the motivating question behind anxiety is, what preparation do I need to take? Like, what is it that's presenting right now? Because anxiety is a very future-focused fear. So if we're focused on the future and we're concerned about something coming up, which the worst case scenario or something that we don't want to happen, then within that there's a really useful message that we need to adhere to and take notice of in terms of what it is that we move forward. So anxiety can be from one of two ways. It can be, or one of three ways actually. It might be that we've had some kind of trauma in the past which is causing us to feel the way that we are, moving forward or when we're about to get on. It can be from thought loops which are spinning out of control. We're unable to ground ourselves in the present moment, and our mind has already gone to that place where we're concerned about what it is that might come up. And also a lack of skill, because if you are presented with a horse who is outside your skill range to manage comfortably what's going on, then your anxiety is actually something that's really useful to you. It doesn't mean that it's the end of the road. It's just telling you, you need to talk to someone, or you need to get some help, or, we need to make sure that your horse is emotionally self-managing before you're actually getting in the saddle. So that's an example of emotional flow, looking at where it is you fit within that spectrum, understand to do to actually take action in a constructive way, and then you stay in flow with that, as opposed to feel this way, let's fake it till we make it, shoulders back sort of thing, which has a very limited time span in terms of effectiveness.
Sure. Okay, so I really like that, the question behind anxiety is, what preparation do I need to take? I like that. Are there other emotions that come up that you could tell us about the questions behind those? That's really interesting to me. This is fascinating.
Yeah. So fear is another really common one.
Okay.
And fear is, well, anxiety is about preparation. What preparation do I need to take? And fear really is, what action do I need to take? Because fear is either telling you that you need to stay or you need to leave, fear is interesting because we have a couple of different parts to fear. We have the fear which is true for the moment, and fear which is not true for the moment. And this is the same for every emotion that we experience. So I think, I'm sort of segueing here, but I think this will be more useful to you in terms of like a broader understanding of the questions. Is that okay?
Okay, yeah, totally.
Territory?
Totally, let's explore.
So within the stories, or within the emotional messages that we're experiencing, there are two different camps that they come up in. The first one is emotions that are true for the moment. So let's use fear, because this gives us a really clear black and white definition of what I'm talking about. So if we're afraid and our fear is true for the moment, what that means is I have a horse in front of me, or I have a situation in front of me which is outside of my zone to skillfully or happily manage.
Okay.
I have a true emotion that is reflective of the experience, which tells me we are not actually bring this to a happy conclusion for you or your horse.
Okay.
So it's true for the moment, fear. Now, emotion or fear that is not true for the moment means that, again, I experience that fear response. However, I have a very calm horse in front of me. You know, for all intents and purposes, there is no reason for me to feel that way. And so that fear is not true for the moment. That is pre-patterned or habitual fear that is coming as a result of past experience, and probably in conjunction with me, you know, feeling a degree of anticipation anxiety about that.
Okay.
So in flow is to first recognize, is what I'm feeling true for the moment? And if yes, what action do I need to take? Or is this experience true for the moment? And if no, then how is it that I can renegotiate this same feeling with the skills and experiences and understandings that I have now to move me towards a better feeling place?
Okay.
That's ultimately what we're trying to do.
Okay. Now, how do we, in our own mind, in those moments, how do we discriminate between the two? Because what if it isn't true for the moment, but really feels true for the moment? How do we discriminate that?
It will feel true for the moment, but it will be familiar to you at the same time. Like, here we go again. Here's this feeling coming back again. It's like an old friend visiting you. That's how. So, for people who have habitually experienced anxiety or habitually experienced fear, you will know whether your experience is true for the moment by that. You will go, I can't believe this is happening again. You know, Here I am again. You might even have a conscious conversation with yourself, which is like, I know this is ridiculous. This is stupid. I can't believe I feel this way. And yet, here I am.
Okay.
You know, so you know that it's not true for the moment. It's something that you're carrying with you. It's like a trauma of sorts. It's basically a trauma response, although trauma is kind of a big word in and of itself.
Sure. Okay. Oh, very interesting. Okay. Very cool.
We're just a light conversation today.
Yeah, just a light chat. Wow, yeah.
I'm not one for small talk anyway, so that works for me.
Perfect. Good. Are you still feeling nervous? You still feeling anxious about this call?
Oh no, I'm away now. I'm away. I get verbally excitable with these topics.
Perfect. Good. I love it. I'm absolutely loving it. Awesome. So let me see. So these emotions then, so we've got anxiety. We say, you know, what preparation do I need to take? Which is awesome, because anxiety is before the action happens, right? And then fear is what action do I need to take rather than the preparation. So that fear then is in the immediate moment. What other challenges do you tend to find with riders that you're coaching, as far as challenging emotions, I guess I want to say?
Anger is one, actually. Like, you can either feel angry at yourself or angry at your horse, and that's actually one that's not actually acceptable.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, it's almost anxiety and fear are more socially acceptable, but anger is kind of like, don't go there. And anger is interesting because anger is really about feeling like there's been a boundary that's been breached. If someone has stepped, or in some way the situation has manifested that someone feels like their horse has done something which has compromised them in some way and has kind of like breached a boundary, even though my personal in order to be angry in the first instance, you have to have a worldview of horses in terms of them doing something to you purpose, in a way. So, like, there's a boundary that's been breached, that you feel like they're not respecting you, or there's some kind of behavior that's happened which is over the threshold. And so I think that a lot of these frustration and anger emotions, interestingly, can be dissolved by really understanding better what motivates horse behavior, and understanding that you can't take things personally, that really how it is your horse is presenting is just their only way of telling you how it is they feel in this situation, in this environment.
Right.
And when you actually, understand that, then some of these frustration or anger experiences dissolve because you have a different framework of operation that you're working under.
Gotcha. So you're getting a better understanding at that point, and so you can see it a little bit more clearly.
Yeah, I think so. Like, frustration really is just too much. Frustration and confusion are commonly linked in together, and that really is, there's too much input, there's too much input and not enough clarity. So when I think about frustration, it's like, okay, what is it that I'm wanting in this situation? Like, what's one thing that I want right now, and how is it that I can go about achieving that? Like, what is one thing that would move me and my horse towards a better feeling place right now? And when you can do that, then you have clarity of action. But in a lot of instances, clarity is the first thing that's lost. Clarity and connection with yourself, basically. Connection with your horse as well, obviously. But if you can have clarity and connect, everything else flows fairly nicely from those places. Okay.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. All right. Anxiety, fear, anger, frustration. Are there other things you typically deal with?
Almost everything.
Everything.
Hit me with an emotion.
Oh gosh, honestly, with the riders that I'm working with, I mean, I guess I feel sometimes there's like the overwhelm, right? But I guess would that go into your frustration? Kind of too much information, not enough clarity?
Yeah, overwhelm, is it in a less comes in?
Yeah, I think so. Or when they're dealing with a challenge, maybe with their horse.
Yeah, so what's really interesting with overwhelm is that we have something called working memory. So working memory is what controls what it is we are concentrating on and what it is we're filtering out at any one time. So for instance, if I am talking to you right now, my working memory is in charge of the conversation that we're having. It's making sure, that I'm phone, and it's blocking out anything else which might distract me from that central purpose. In terms of a lesson, working memory is really in charge of words that are coming from you to the student. They're also concentrating on what their horse is doing. They're concentrating on the environment that they're in. Everything that is particular to that moment is what their working memory is fixated on. Now, thing with working memory is that we have bandwidth that we can dedicate to it at any one time. So the way that I think about it is that you have 10 points of working memory, if you think about it this way. 10 points of working memory. Now, the other thing about working memory is that it is what is it's divided up into physical action and also language. So anything to do with language occupies your working memory, and anything to do with physical action occupies your working memory. So when we think about that, when we think about the specific language element, the itty bitty shitty committee also occupies our working memory. And the instruction that we might receive in a lesson occupies our working memory. And then if we think about trying to learn a skill, that particular element would occupy our working memory, plus what it is we would normally have to do to make our horse go from A to B, or to, move in harmony with our horse.
Okay.
If you come into the lesson already feeling a bit concerned, worrying about what other people are thinking, and perhaps thinking about who's watching on the sideline and what it is they're thinking about you, you might have used already points of your working memory out of 10.
Okay.
And all of a sudden you're learning a new skill, so you're processing the incoming language, which is like 2 or 3 points, plus the new lots of physical information which is coming in. And you can see how pretty soon, if someone isn't in a place where they're feeling calm and relaxed about how things are going, you basically blow your bandwidth and you can't actually assimilate the information that's coming in, and it feels really overwhelming.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I had a student tell me the other day that they felt like that they were too full from learning, and that if they were going to accept anything more into their brain, something else would fall out the other side, and they were afraid they'd forget how to tie their shoes.
That is exactly the feeling, like you're basically just full up. You are
Yes.
full up.
Yes.
And it's really interesting as a coach, or even as a parent, because you think, I have told this person 10 times this same instruction, and yet it's still not sinking in. And it's often the case that actually it hasn't even touched the sides, because we're so full of other stuff in our minds already that we just can't.
Gotcha. We can't process anything more. Okay.
Yeah, you literally can't process the information, and so that's why here there's times and take a different thing from it each time, because you've processed what you're actually able to process mentally and emotionally at that particular point, and now you're ready to see the next layer of information.
Gotcha. So you get more ready each time.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. I refer to them now as upward cycles of progress. Basically, you're never moving backwards, you're always cycling up, and there's new information that's available to you in every cycle that you just weren't able to take on board in the previous cycle for whatever reason.
Gotcha. Okay. That's super interesting. So, and this has got me, maybe it's not a time to ask this question, but I'm intrigued, and you've got me thinking about it now. When I'm working with riders, so here I'm going to put myself out on a limb here, just for the whole world to hear and hold me accountable. When I'm teaching students, if I'm trying to keep in mind all these points, this bandwidth, right? Their mental, emotional bandwidth for all of the things that their working memory has to keep track of. How can I'm trying to think how I even want to word the question. How can I best present myself or the ideas to them so that it can be absorbed or can be filtered into or used by their working memory? Does that question even make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
It does make sense. Well, part of it is in the preparation. I know in Joyride, my membership program, when we go through this process, what I encourage people to do is, so the night before clinics, for example, or the night before shows, or anything which you recognise you might be challenged in, you do a brain dump, which is basically like a 10-minute download of all of the crap that's in your mind that does not serve any useful purpose. So I'm going to speak with you in March, and I might be like, oh my God, I'm so nervous, Katya's going to be there, what if he thinks I'm a total douche, what if I can't ride, what if this, like, just spend 10 minutes like downloading all of that stuff, and handwritten. And what they've found in doing studies with exam students who typically choked during exams, this is where a lot of this information first came to light, is that if you actually spend 10 minutes on all of stuff which isn't useful, you free up work done scientific experiments on it with students and also with people going into business interviews. So that's a really good pre-clinic exercise, just to actually get out all of the doubts and concerns that are basically like mental toxic residue.
Okay. Wow.
From a coaching perspective, I think it's really interesting to, and it's not always possible, I mean, I'm talking in the ideal world, but to really have a conversation and see if people know how it is they best learn. So for me, I'm a very visual and kinesthetic person, so I like to see something happening and then I like to feel it. And when I learn in that way, then I'm able to kind of compute the information in a way that makes sense for me. If people they tend to talk faster, whereas kinesthetic people tend to talk slower and more methodical. And then you'll hear the people who are auditory because they sort of like cock their ear towards you, and they tend to like do little things which tip you off to people's different learning style.
Okay.
But I think feeding back is really interesting, so that you have like when you're teaching something, there's very clear directives, which I know you do already, about what it is that's expected, and then to actually relay that back and to go, did you get that? Like, can you tell me can we go through this together, and can you coach me through this? Because when someone's required to actually assimilate it, then you can't actually say something back unless you process that in some way.
Gotcha.
So I think that's a really good process to go through, of saying it and then asking if there's, anything that needs clarifying, come back to me with it, and then we'll kind of do it together.
Okay. Oh, fantastic. Good. So yeah, we got a question actually that just came in live from Heather asking, how do we dump the information from our brain? Do we write it out? And that's what you were kind of talking about there, is, writing that out rather than just thinking about it, right?
Yeah, it has to be pen to paper. Type it. I think we're hardwired for assimilating information better in that way. So the best thing to do is to just grab some paper that you can throw in the big woods, grab a pen, alarm for 10 minutes time, or set a stopwatch for 10 minutes time, and just get writing of all the things down that you're concerned about. And sometimes this process feels a little weird if you're not used to it. So, and if you don't know where to start, just start writing, I don't know where to start, I don't know where to start, I don't know where to start. And pretty soon you'll find that the pen hits the paper and it all starts spilling out. One of the concerns that I had, which I know is live for other people as well, is that like somehow writing all that stuff out might make it real or make you focus on it more, but it's really not about that. It's just think of it as a detoxification. So everything that's hitting the paper is purged from your mind, and then you don't need to read it back. You can just throw it in the bin afterwards.
Gotcha. Okay. So, well, and that does that not kind of come into your what you were talking about with those loops, right? Kind of touching base with your thought loops and recognizing that, calling them out maybe for what they are.
Absolutely, yeah. It's that awareness. Once you have the awareness, and once you a cycle of thoughts that all of us are engaged with, you also realize how much they hold you hostage. And they're further on from that, how unnecessary that is if you're actually willing to face up to them and say, I recognize this is how I feel right now. I recognize this is what I'm thinking. However, if I actually assess the situation, am I safe? Yes, I'm safe. Am I able to do what it is that's required? Yes, I am. Am I uncomfortable? Yes, I am, but that's okay. And then you can venture forward in alignment with that higher intention about, where it is that you want to take things, basically, which is what our horses are doing. We're asking our horses to do all the time as well, like navigate the outer edges of our comfort zone and just play with that threshold so that you're growing in resilience and strength, basically, on every level.
Gotcha. Well, this kind of sounds like something that would be helpful to do even outside of our horses, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think that these are transferable life skills. And the thing that I tell all of my, that we talk about a lot in Joyride, which is the main place that I'm working with riders, I tell them, like, you don't have if you're feeling anxious, or if you're feeling a certain amount of emotions which you might be describing as unwanted with your horse, chances are you are feeling those things in other areas of your life. You know, you're feeling them at work, or you're feeling them with your kids, or you're feeling them in relationship. And every moment of discomfort that presents is an opportunity to renegotiate that in a new way. And if you can move through a bit of anxiety, or move through a bit of apprehension, or deal in a way that deal with anger and frustration in a way that aligns with your values and keeps you really centered, you are growing those thought muscles, you're growing those emotion muscles. And that will only pay dividends when it comes to spending time with your horse.
Gotcha. Well, and that makes perfect sense. We've heard people talk about how when they get better with certain things with their horses, it kind of touches base with them, and they get better with certain other things throughout their entire life. And I guess it kind of goes into, I've heard it said, the way we do anything is the way we do everything, right? Learning and growing from there.
Exactly. There's I think of them as like a magnifying glass, because we're so about our horses and we're so invested in them, that we have that perhaps needs to be integrated or dealt with rises to the surface. And we can force that down, and then we only get so far. But if you actually step up to the plate and allow that to move through it, everything starts to become better.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's fantastic. So you've mentioned a couple times now your online membership program, Joyride, and you said that that's where you primarily work with riders on a continual basis. Is that true?
Yeah. So that's my subscription program, and up until I do a little bit of one-on-one, but not much. And really, it's because it's my favourite way of working with people. I think that there's a couple of reasons as to why that's the case. I think that the support element is huge, like community support and then ongoing support when you're out there doing your thing. And the group is a huge part of that. Like, there's such a cool gang. Like, they're an amazing crew of riders. And I think once you there and you realize that whatever it is you're going through, there's definitely someone else in there who's gone through the same thing.
Gotcha.
There's a huge amount of comfort in that. And then I've divided it up into different pathways. So basically, you make your pathways sort of dedicated to specific topics. So anxiety is one. We deal with returning from injury or dealing with trauma, performance under pressure. So that can be a competition or clinics, so many things, process setting, flow, it's all in there. So I think it's just a really good way if you're a self-motivated learner to go through the material, because it's paced at your pace. Obviously you take it as it comes, and then I'm there to give support or answer questions and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's my favorite way.
Very cool. Very cool. How can people find more information about the Joyride program?
It's all on confidentrider.online. You can find all the deets there.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So that's the membership program, Joyride. Now tell me about Confident Rider. Tell me a little bit about that.
So Confident Rider is my business name, if you like. So I operate under Confident Rider, but Joyride is the Confident Rider membership program.
Gotcha.
So within that, I've got a podcast and a blog, and on social media, I'm Confident Rider. So that's where you can kind of find me on Facebook and Instagram and all the places.
Gotcha. All the places. Yeah, absolutely. And I know you share quite a bit of things through your social media, and it's fantastic. I really love reading what you post on Instagram. There's a lot of really great stuff on there that you come up with.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Post on Facebook and Instagram, and I've been as active in the videos just because it's hard to keep up with the machine sometimes.
Yes,
that is,
I totally get that.
I try to do a I definitely post every day on Facebook and Instagram, and I have a weekly podcast that comes out on a Wednesday that you were a guest on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And also, I try to do a couple of videos a week on YouTube, but that one tends to be a bit reticent sometimes if I get behind the 8 ball.
Yes. Well, it's so easy to get, like you said, behind the 8 ball. It can be hard to keep up with the machine sometimes.
It really is. It really is. But it's such a blessing in so many ways. I mean, people say, "Oh, the horse world," but I've met the incredible people through horses, and it's just a community. Well, maybe it's just ours, Patrick, that are really cool.
I think so. I think you're right. Really I think we have the best.
Yeah, I think so too. So, feel pretty lucky. I've had my share of eye raisers, but that's generally not the norm.
Well, I kind of think that's every industry. It's everything we can do. That's just people, right?
It totally is. Yeah, it totally is. Usually about my hair, like I should comb my hair or do something different. I'm like, wow, okay, thank you for that. Oh, dear.
Oh
so
my.
Funny.
Well, they're not looking for the right things if that's what they're worried about, I guess, right?
No, exactly.
Oh goodness.
We just have a giggle.
Yes, for sure. For sure. So actually, we have a question that came in from Linnea, and she wants to know, do the pathways, so she's talking, I believe, about your Joyride program, do the pathways deal just with managing our own emotions, or does the material also deal with horse emotions?
No, so I'm just rider focused, and obviously we have lots of live sessions within the group too where we're discussing that element because it's not something that can be separated. And I guess I discuss it from my personal perspective, but it's not a horse training program, if that makes sense. It's a rider training program.
Okay, perfect. And who would you say the ideal person for the Joyride program, who would you say they would be?
Oh, that's a good question, Patrick.
I've got you thinking now.
I do. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, you have got me thinking. I think that most of anyone who's going to be listening to you is interested in what it is I'm going to talk about, which is I'm really fascinated with what I refer to as transformational horsemanship, which is, horses as life, and really understanding that in order the partnership that we want and the connection that we want, that we have to look to our. And so for anyone who is interested in that kind of relationship, that it's for them, because it's all about, how it is we show up in the best way possible, as cliche as that sounds. So if you're just interested in I want to win the ribbon and I want to kick this goal, and then it's not that I can't help you do that, but it's not so much my interest. I'm all about the partnership first and foremost, and how it is we can be compassionate horse people, and then from there the sky's the limit, I think.
Gotcha. Awesome. So anybody who's interested in the journey more than the goal.
Yeah. Doesn't preempt the goal, but that's got to be the start point.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Very cool. Let's see. I have some other questions on here. Let me see if I can dig through and get this whole technology thing working for me here. I want to. There seems to be every now and then there's some interruptions on the audio, and I want to make sure that I don't lose you. My phone has been doing some screwy things lately, so I want to make sure we get these in before, just in case I lose service or something. Like I said, there's reasons why I don't work for NASA, and every time I go to do one of these damn broadcasts, I find out more and more what those reasons are. Okay.
I think you do very well.
Oh gosh, well, you're very kind. Thank you. Let's see. So we've got a question from Tanya, and Tanya asks, you have thoughts on how to achieve confidence and connection while out hacking. What things could I do as a rider to help? I've listened to the podcast Anticipation Anxiety. I think this has a lot to do with it. So Tanya's talking about being out hacking, or here in the States, trail riding. If I remember right, I remember the Tanya that put this in. Tanya is from New Zealand. So she's out hacking. What are the things that she can do as a rider to achieve more confidence and connection?
Okay. I'm going to venture slightly out of my zone with this one and say that I think that what's really important to cultivate as riders across the board is an awareness of the subtle signs of tension and how they manifest in our horses. So we're being, the very foundation block is developing everything that we've been talking about over the course of our conversation, which is that ability to be present, that ability to be in the direct experience of your moment and navigate what it is that's presenting to you. But then saying that we've got all of that going on for ourselves, and for the most part we are, in the moment, then the next part is having clarity about what represents threshold for your horse, so that if you're out and they are experiencing incremental increases in tension, that you're able to recognize when that's happening and empty out the worry before it gets to a stage where both of you are potentially cost. That's, I think, one of the key things. But the other part which Tanya mentions is the anticipation anxiety, and I think this is a huge part for riders both at home and out on the trail, out hacking. And anticipation anxiety is you sending your mind into the future and again imagining the worst case scenario or something going wrong coming to life. So maybe you're out on the trail and you see something up ahead that you potentially think might cause concern for your horse, and you preempt that by actually becoming anxious yourself. Now, how that occurs is that you create this mental movie in your mind which fires off the part of your brain, the amygdala, what creates the anxiety response in us. So we've become preemptive of something that might happen in the future that isn't actually happening at the moment, and we're experiencing anxiety as a result of that. So the way around that is to recognize that tendency, if you have that, to create anxiety that's disconnected from the moment. And to get yourself back to the moment, I think there's a couple of really good things you can do, and that is to say, okay, obviously when I experience anxiety, I'm focusing on what I don't want to happen. So in order for me to be responsive and facilitate what it is that I do want to happen, then I actually need to know what is it that I'm looking for. So it might be I'm looking for a connected, responsive, relaxed horse, and that's the first benchmark that you've created for yourself. And then you can ask the question, do I have your attention? Which is, maybe you're looking to pick up a slight feel on the rein and get their ear to flick back towards you, or maybe you want to make sure that you can move their body across and they're still soft and with you. And those sorts of questions just continually speak to the type of emotional atmosphere that you're wanting to create. So I usually have 3 questions that I work with, and it's like, are you with me? Am I relaxed? Where are we going? Those are 3 questions that I ask myself all the time, no matter whether we're in the round pen, the arena, or out on the trail. And if I ask, are you with me? It might be, if I feel like their attention has become fixed on a future point, then it would be like, okay, can I pick up a feel on the rein and have you come back to me? Can I move your body and out of brace? And if not, then the next question is, well, what do I need to do to facilitate that? So it's constantly staying in this space where you're asking yourself really high quality questions that actually point in the direction of what it is you would like to experience, as opposed to letting your mind go to that place where you're in a movie of your own creation that is sending you to a reactive place, which of course then communicates that concern to your horse.
Gotcha. Okay. I like that. What were those 3 questions again? Remind me of those.
Are you with me?
Are you with me?
Am I relaxed?
Because am I relaxed?
We can sort of, you can. I've often found when I've asked, so like, all of a sudden I notice that I'm gripping my bum in the saddle, and I'm like, dude, wow, just relax.
Okay.
If you wanted your horse to be relaxed, why have you lifted up? Or, you know, that you might want to relax your shoulders. So it's interesting how we get out of our bodies when we're in that place. And then where are we going? Which is like, is there a purpose to where it is that we're going? And I found if I can answer those questions, it just puts me in a good place to at least know what to do next.
Gotcha. Okay. Are you with me? Am I relaxed? Where are we going? Those are great. So now you're saying, okay, since you're in the hot seat, what the hell, I'll ask. So you're saying these are your 3 questions that you catch yourself, or that you ask yourself whenever you get into kind of challenging situations. So what sort of particular, you can tell me to piss off if you don't want to answer this, what sort of situations and challenges do you find yourself in, and how do you work your way through those?
I've got 2 examples for you, actually.
Awesome.
So I have just been going through the saddle, which is the first time that I've done it.
Oh, I'm sorry. We broke up there for a couple seconds of that.
That's okay.
You're
Should
working
I take it from the top?
Yeah, let's take it back from the top. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so no, that's fine. I just said, so I'm in the process now, or have been for the last little while, of starting my own horse under saddle.
Yes.
And it's the first time that I've done that. So I've been talking about my own challenges a lot on my pages. But basically, you know, he's a big, sensitive, and I just use those questions as soon as I get on. It's like, you know, are you with me? Am I relaxed? Where are we going? To make sure that there's some kind of checklist that we come back to, and then we can work on whatever it is that we have in mind, or be responsive to what it is that's presenting. The other thing that comes up that's a little catchphrase or a mantra that I use in this same situation is that I only go as far as the next good step. And for me, that has kept me in a place where I am able to do much more. It's been like a superpower, because if I only go as far as the next good step, then I'm pretty confident that when I do take that next step, that the foundation before has been solid, good relaxation platform to come from, which you know, facilitates what needs. So when I've got to that place of looking at my horse, you know, prior to first backing him, for instance, or that first getting on, and I thought, oh my goodness, what if this and this happens? I just say, okay, only go as far as the next good step, and then I'll be checking out the very incremental pieces in the lead up to that. So that's something that I always use and always come back to. The other challenge, I have another horse that I've had for 18 months now, and she has been very, very anxious, and she's got a different background. She's 10, but she's had some things not work for her in training that has resulted in a lot of internal pressure for her. And what's interesting for me is she's been such a great teacher in making me stay in the moment and in the experience and get out of the storm. And I just wrote a blog about that last week, actually, because at first we started on the ground, and I was a really long time with her on the ground and a long time in the round pen. And when I first got her and I just took her into the arena, she sort of steamed off with me, and it was quite an unpleasant experience. So I stripped it right back, and it's been fantastic. But then I sort of had this residue within me of expectation about those first few rides, and so now we're riding out on the inlet, and I've got a big we're quite close to the sea where I am, and I just had to conscious of where that line was in me and what I was putting on her that was no longer hers.
Gotcha.
Know, she used to be anxious, but now she's actually okay. So I was like, we have to, I call it be each other's courage encouragers, where it's like, I'm going to give you courage and you're going to give me courage. And there has to be a certain amount of uncomfortability. I know that's not a word, but it's a word I use. Uncomfortability in moving forward, because neither of us have done this before with each other. So that's kind of I'm using those questions as well. You know, are you with me? Am I relaxed? Where are we going? And then we just, we gallop up into the hills and have an amazing time.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So when you ask the where are we going, Roseanne has entered in the question for this, and I think it's a great question. When you're asking where are we going, are you meaning literally in this moment, physically, where are we going as far as the next physical step, or where are we going in our progress, in our plans, in our goals? How are you asking that question?
Yeah, so it really, for me, it's twofold. So when I'm working with my young horse, the where are we going is literal. It's
okay,
like,
sure.
where are we going? Like if I'm steering, it might be, okay, let's ride towards that pole, and let's ride towards that pole, and let's ride towards that pole, because I'm checking the steering. Like that's the
Yes.
the stage that we're at, where everything is like super basic. So literally, where are we going? When I'm riding more established horses, I may not even get to that question, but the where are we going is like, I think of it in two ways, which is intention and attention. So your intention is this bigger vision of the type of experience that you want to cultivate. And that's what I check in with in the first instance. So if I go down to the arena, like I have been with Nadia, the horse I just described, anxiety, my intention is a really relaxed, loose, and supple horse. That's my intention.
Okay.
And when I think of those words, I feel what that feels like, and I see my horse like moving around in this fluid, connected way, and I get really excited by that vision. That's my intention. Now, my attention is on what is presenting. So she might be a little bit tight through her jaw, or there might be a bit of brace through her body when I ask for the bend, or she might be responding to something in the bushes. But my intent hooked into that lovely relaxed horse, and my attention is on what needs to be done in the moment to move.
Gotcha.
Ultimately, I'm always just hoping to end up in a better feeling place for both myself and my horse than when I started. If that's what happens, then everything's a success from my point of view.
Perfect. I love that. Intention and attention. That's a really great way to think about that. It's a really great way to think about that.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that takes us a little bit into our next question from Donna. Donna says that she'd love to hear your and my thoughts about ways or exercises to increase a somewhat green, anxious horse's trust in the rider outside of the usual groundwork, understanding horse language, treating with respect, consistency, etc. I guess that for me, that would be, we'd have to define what we would call our usual groundwork, understanding of the language and treating with respect and consistency. But so when she's asking this, what are your thoughts on ways or exercises to increase the confidence and trust in that rider for that anxious green horse? It sounds very much to me similar to what we were talking about with Tanya's question about the awareness of the thresholds, and maybe sort of being that, you call it a courage encourager.
Yeah, like you, this is such a broad topic that it sort of encompasses loads of different areas. But
yeah.
I guess the two things that pop into my head are reliability. So when your horse can 100% rely, or for the most part rely on how it is you present each time, then there's a huge amount of confidence and trust that is bred from that. And also clarity of understanding. So when I do this, this means this, and it can give you the answer that you want. I think that ambiguity in aids and and for the most part, that confusion and the reactivity of the rider is what creates lack of confidence in the horse, I think. But I know that's not a very satisfying answer, because this sort of like fuses into a few years.
Yes.
Well, oh, are you still there?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to ask you the same thing. I thought, oh, I lost her.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool, very cool.
I think maybe also knowing what represents threshold for your horse. You know, like if you're looking to facilitate confidence, then it's like, well, at what point do you think your comfort zone exists at the moment? Like, what's your comfort zone for you? What's your comfort zone for your horse? And what represents one step beyond that? And then it maintain that same sense of reliability, clarity, and consistency, and connecting within yourself in that space, so that you're able to guide your horse. It's also when he's in a space that's obviously challenging.
Gotcha. So then the question is, when your horse gets beyond his threshold, does it take you beyond yours?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Then it's like the green plus green equals black and blue, isn't it?
Yes. Right. Exactly. Okay. Oh, that's awesome. So yeah. So we have to be aware of those things for sure.
What would you say in response to that question?
Gosh, well, I think I would go along with that also, kind of defining what, she asked about it as separate from our typical groundwork or exercises, things like that. I think I would first have to say, well, what are your typical groundwork exercises, or what is the typical work that you do, and is the work that you're presently doing supporting that confidence in your horse? We talk a lot. I talk a lot in the clinics. I had a lot of discussion today at the clinic I'm teaching about obedience versus acceptance, right? Just because the horse is doing a thing doesn't mean they're actually comfortable with it, doesn't mean they're actually okay with it and kind of confidently and willingly giving of themselves. We talk about yielding tension versus shaping relaxation, so how is the horse actually feeling about what they're doing? And I think that has, to me, that would have a large influence on what my answer would be. So I kind of hesitate to give answers about that, because without seeing it in person, I feel like I'm always going to give an insufficient answer, but I would always want to I would want to know, with the work that you're doing presently, is that supporting the confidence that you're trying to build in your horse? Yeah.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think that's beautiful. A beautiful answer.
Oh gosh. Well, all right. I'll write that one down and I'll make sure I repeat it next time.
That's a I would say.
Oh gosh. Okay, cool. So this is really awesome. I feel like we could go on talking about a million things. So one of the things I know that we deal with this challenge to be present with ourselves and with our horses, and I feel like that's a lot of where a lot of our challenges are coming from, right? Like we're talking about, awareness of the thresholds, encouraging courage, these what we're calling the upward cycles of progress, things like that. If you were to give our listeners an actionable step to increase their ability to be more present with themselves and with their horse, what would you say that should be?
An actionable step to be more present with their horse, is that right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna go from this conversation. I'm gonna go out and work with a horse. I'm not really, but let's say I was. So tomorrow I will be, right? Tomorrow I think I have 8 horses or so that I'm gonna be working with tomorrow. So what's a step that I can take away after I've listened to this whole conversation and become more aware and kind of maybe filled up the bandwidth on my working memory? What's a step that I can take to build a little more awareness or increase my ability, I guess is what I want to say, increase my ability to be present with myself and with my horse?
Okay, so I think a great thing to cultivate is what I refer to as an emotional transition, which is when you are about to go outside, or when you're about to catch your horse, or you're about to get on, you take a few moments to actually intentionally reconnect with what it is or who it is you want to be, more than what it is that you want to do. and what it is that looks like in terms of your actions and how it is that you show up. So everything that we are wanting are actually transformable elements of being. So if you want to be more confident, how can you practice confidence? If you want to be more present, how can you practice presence? If you want to be more easeful or more graceful, how can you practice being more easeful and more graceful when you show up? So perhaps the first part is actually to get out of your head and drop back into your body or back into your heart and say, like, okay, let's just reconnect with what it feels like to have my feet on the ground for the moment, because so many of us have got so cerebral and like caught up in our minds that we forget that we're a body also.
Yes.
And then take a couple of deep breaths and just let ourselves physically relax, and then ask yourself, what is it that I want? What is it that I want? And then off the back of that, who is it that I need to be in order to best create that with my horse?
What is it that I want? Who is it that I need to be?
Mm-hmm.
I like it. I'm writing that down. Perfect.
It's an inside-out job.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. All right. An inside-out job. That's so true. So what is it that I want, and who is it that I need to be? I love that. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And then that creates an atmosphere, doesn't it? An atmosphere of how you show up. It's an atmosphere of how you pick up the rope, an atmosphere of how you put on the halter, all of those things which just translate something that means something to your horse that often we become unaware of in the busyness of needing to get things done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because we're so much, a friend of mine refers to it as we're so much the human doing instead of the human being.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. What is it I want? Who do I need to be? I love that. Let's see. So I feel like we can kind of come to a wrap up here, but is there anything before I do that, before we go into kind of some final fun questions here, is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience at this point?
Oh, no, I think we've covered quite a lot, and I'm so grateful to be able to have these conversations, and I feel really privileged because you're such I love your work so much that it's fantastic to just be a part of your podcast.
Oh, well, thank you, and likewise. So it's fantastic to have you here as part of this and be able to share your work with my audience as well. I love that.
Thank you.
I love that. Awesome. So, okay, now here we go. The fun questions. Dun dun dun. If you could ride with anyone, past or present, who would it be and why?
Oh my goodness. This is really hard.
Oh.
I need to prep for this.
Yeah. See, there's no prep for these. These are total Johnny on the spot questions.
Who would I ride with? Oh my goodness! I think. This has thrown me, Patrick. I'm like, I need to grab it.
No pressure, but the whole world is listening and waiting.
We're come back to this one. I'm coming back to this one. You do the next one. I'm going to come back to it.
Oh man, I don't know. They go on from here. What is your present personal definition of horsemanship? That's the next one.
My present definition of horsemanship.
Yeah.
Okay, so my present definition of horsemanship is where we are listening in equal proportion or more so to what we are asking, and where we facilitate relaxation to the place where we leave our horses in a better feeling space than where we started.
Ooh, I love that. I might steal that next time somebody asks me. That's awesome.
I feel like that made up a slight bit of ground from that first question, which I'm still musing over.
It did. Just okay. I was gonna ask if you were ready to come back to that. So okay, good. Let's see. Okay, this one I always find this to be a fun one. What book are you currently reading, or what was the last book that you read?
What was the last book that I read?
I'm kind of a nerd about that. I'm one that has to handle physical books, and I travel with like 20 in the car all the time.
Yeah, I have like a billion books on my Kindle as well. But I actually just recently reread, and this isn't even a lie, Dressage in the Fourth Dimension by Sherry Ackerman.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Because I read it a really long time ago, and then it stared at me on the bookshelf, and I was like, I wonder if I reread that, whether I will get more out of it than I did before. And so I read that, and I also just read Animals in Translation by Temple Grandin.
Ah, yeah, fantastic, awesome.
Which is cool.
Awesome, very cool.
Yeah,
I love it. So you're more of a Kindle person?
Actually,
I'm sorry.
Well, I feel like I was a bit behind the 8 ball on reading that one, actually, that I should have read that years ago.
Oh, well.
Okay, so I don't want to be pigeonholed here between Kindle and handheld books, but this is my reason. So I love a book to hold in my hand. However, living in New Zealand, books are like $2 million to buy. So what I do is I download them on my Kindle, and because I read so much, and then if I like it, if it's like a real keeper, then I will buy it in hardback as well.
Okay.
But it's like a filter system for books that way.
That's a really great way to do that. That would save me a lot of library space, I think.
Yes.
Or not, I don't know. I think I enjoy, for one reason or another, damn near everyone I pick up. So
yeah, I know.
That's awesome. That's a really great way to do that. I love that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. All right. If you could, this one's going to be maybe fun. I don't know. If you could print a message on a T-shirt, or if you had a giant billboard to print any message you wanted on it for the whole world to see, what would the message be? Uh-oh.
Oh my goodness. It's like, part of me is like the naughty streak comes out, and I'm like, no, you should give something like amazing to the world to like focus on here. So, okay, so I'm going to give you 2 answers.
Okay.
This is making me the most nervous of anything I've done in a long time, Patrick. So
perfect.
I think on one hand, I'm all about running your own race. So I love run your own race. It's like, do your own thing, be your own person, follow your own stuff, run your own race. That's my side. On the other side, I really love don't half-ass anything, whole-ass everything. I'm like, if you're going to do stuff, put your whole ass behind it.
Oh, I love it.
Get in there, do it. Get it really wrong, get it really right. Whichever way, just whole ass.
I love it.
And then see how you come out the other side.
That's awesome.
I feel like that could help people.
I love, that reminds me very much of a comment that I make all the time whenever I'm teaching. I tell everyone they have total permission to suck at anything that we do, so I like that. Don't half-ass it, whole-ass it.
As long as you whole-ass it and suck.
Yeah, exactly. Own it.
Suck, then who knows what the other half could have been.
I love that. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Cool. Okay, so let's see. Let's jump back if you're ready for if you could.
Oh God.
You're not ready. Oh well, I mean the pressure's.
Okay. Well, do you know what's happened to me? And this is probably not a high point to end on, but like I had someone that I would have suggested, but then I recently found out that they weren't who I thought they were. So now I'm like thrown for 6 on people that I suggest maybe not living up to my expectations.
Gotcha.
So this is really, really, I would actually, you know what, I would love to go to Portugal and study there. I would love to go and study with the people who have been in the lineage of, the classical lineage of Nuno and Vera and all of these beautiful people. I think that would be that's my, anyone really that has demonstrated empathy and connection and understanding, and it's kind of what is interesting to me, and I'm sure there's loads of people who I don't even know that I would give my right arm to ride with, who I would whole ass it in. You would whole ass it,
there you go.
Do what I could. Yeah, I would whole ass.
That's awesome.
Be like, hi, the over-enthusiastic amateur. Yeah.
That's perfect. I love it. Great. Oh, and we're gonna have to get you. We're gonna have to get you to Portugal. That is so fun. I spend every winter there, and It is. Well, every winter. I spend most of the winter there.
Just thinking about it, Patrick.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you what, we're gonna have to get you there. We're gonna have to get you there. It's super fun.
Yeah, I would love that. Yes.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Perfect. So let's see, 2 more questions. Number 1 is, how can folks find you?
Oh, I can actually answer this. I really I have my hands pressed together. Like, please don't ask me the names of the reindeer. Okay, so the places people can find me, my website, confidentrider.online. Everything kind of springs off there. They can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/The Confident Rider. On Instagram, going through all of them now, and confident_rider. I am on there. And then I have a podcast, the Confident Rider podcast, which is a good place to hang out, I reckon.
Perfect. Perfect. Awesome. Okay, now the next question. Here we go. This next question might be easier than we think. I don't know. Don't be too nervous about it. But it's a question actually. Breathe. Everything is good. Just remember, what is it that I want and who do I need to be, right?
Where are we going?
Where are we going? There. Are you with me? I love it. I love it. That's awesome. So I like to do, when I do videos, I like to do what I call the question of the day. And that's a question that generally I ask for the listeners. I ask for the audience, and they get to answer the question. When I have a guest on, like such as for these podcasts, I like to throw that in the court of the guest. So you get to ask the question of the day for the audience, and then the audience gets to answer your question in their comments following the video here. So if we're going to do that, what would be your question of the day for the audience?
So I'm asking a question of your audience in relation to what we've been talking about?
Oh, I mean, I suppose it could be any question at all if you want. But yes, you get to ask.
Oh my goodness. Can you give me an example of a question that's been asked?
Oh gosh. Oh gosh.
I take this seriously, Patrick.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some of the questions that have been asked. Let's see, a lot of times when we've got folks talking about their training or this, oh gosh, see, now you've got me stumped here.
Do you like how I swung it around?
Yeah, no, that's not fair. That's just, you're just buying time now, Jane. I know what you're doing here. You're just buying time. So sometimes when I get my question and answer sessions going and somebody talks about a horse being fearful, you know, maybe my question might be, what's a situation that you found your horse fearful in, or what's something that has brought up fear in your horse, or something like that. You know, it can be pretty vague, can be pretty general. It could be, you know, what do you like on your pizza?
Okay,
I don't know.
I'm catching the drift now. I'm ready to whole ass it.
Okay, let's whole ass it.
Okay, so I'm going to preface it and then I'm going to fire the question. So my preface is that I am of the belief that the moment we've taken things too far is the moment that we've lost connection. So we've either lost connection with ourselves or we've lost connection with our horse. Moment where we've gone out of a responsive place into a reactive place.
Okay.
So my question for the audience is twofold. Firstly, no, let's just keep it one. What do you do to re-establish connection with your horse when you feel like you've lost it?
Ooh, I love that. That's fantastic. What do you do to re-establish connection with your horse when you feel like you've lost it? Perfect. All right. Well, gang, you've heard that. That's our question of the day, coming from the confident rider, Jane Pike. Oh, and now she's breathing.
That's it. I'm breathing. I'm doing my calisthenics, moving energy through. Yeah.
Good. I love that. I love that. Well, gang, leave your answers to that question of the day in the comments section of this video. That's fantastic. I know I'm going to be looking forward to hearing what the answers are, reading what the answers are, and I imagine Jane might check in also to see what those are. Jane, this has been so fun.
I totally will. Thank you so much.
This has been so fun. I'm loving it.
Such a gracious host.
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you for being so fun to chat with. This has been super fun. And yeah, I really enjoyed being in the hot seat first and then putting you in the hot seat second. That's yeah, I like I like that. So.
Yeah, I'm going to go and have a lie down.
There you go. There you go. Perfect. Perfect. I love it. So I'm going to do a wrap up here, Jane. If you want to hang on for just a moment, I will be right back with you.
Sure thing.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you bet. Thank you. All right, gang. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to episode number 40 of Talking About Horses. I really appreciate you giving Jane and I your ear for this time. Please remember that if you've missed any of it, you can access the full broadcast through Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, or by streaming directly from our website by accessing the Talking About Horses page from the Education drop-down menu. Through whatever platform you're listening, please be sure to give us a rating, a comment, a review, and maybe a share with your friends if you think they'd be interested as well. Your word of mouth and support is the fuel for this fire. We'll catch up with you next time, gang. Thanks so much.